Law enforcement leaders from Southwest Utah gathered for an hour-long discussion with Utah Congressman Chris Stewart on Wednesday on issues affecting nearly every jurisdiction nationwide. The death of George Floyd at the hands of police officers has sparked protests and discussions on race, police abuse, and criminal justice reform across the country.
And there's not much that stands between us and just absolute chaos. And if you don't believe that, then pick any night and watch the video of the riots from the night before. And not just in one place around the country. Most Americans recognize all of us matter. Black lives matter, Hispanic lives matter, police officers' lives matter. And the only thing saving us from the chaos of that is you guys.
Stewart is looking to increase federal funding to help in de-escalation training for officers.
We would love anything and everything we can to help get us to help our officers do better.
However, getting that training could be a problem for smaller agencies who can't afford the time to do the training.
How do we do that in a small agency that only has 4 or 5 officers to a great big agency that has a couple hundred? We can't, one answer isn't fit for everybody. We've got to mix things up a little bit and find out what's unique to each of our agencies and how do we make that happen.
And the idea of defunding police and replacing them with social workers, they alluded to be dangerous.
25% of the officer-involved shootings are with someone who has mental health issues. And so you can't just draw a line, well, this is mental health, therefore you don't need the police. Or this is domestic dispute, therefore you don't need the police. The truth is that you probably do.
They all agree more treatment is needed for those with mental health and substance abuse issues, and incarceration for that doesn't work.
You know, we can't solve all of society's problems, and yet we keep having these things put upon us that aren't law enforcement related.
Yeah.
But there's no place else for them to go because they don't belong in jail. They belong in be met. But when there's only 6 beds or maybe 24 beds now for the entire southwest state of Utah, half the time we'll take people into the hospital to have them pink sheeted and they get turned right back out on the street because there's no place to send them to, or they go to jail.
Stewart said with the direction the country is going towards legalizing drugs, the problems will only get worse.
But unfortunately, some of those individuals have done it for so long that they physically destroyed themselves and they die in the facility, or they commit suicide.
And it's going to be worse for you, not better. And one example of that, but an easy one, is the availability and the acceptability of drugs. I mean, Oregon is going to vote this year to legalize all drugs. These things are not healthy for people, and there's eventually outcomes that come from them. And a lot of them are mental health issues that you all end up dealing with.
But one thing's certain, they all plan to uphold the law, and those who violate it won't be tolerated.
We're going to hold people accountable for criminal behavior. Even with some of the issues we saw at the last protest, we weren't able to address those issues immediately, but we fortunately had video and some other things, and we've been able to make some arrests in those cases and hold people accountable. And we continue to, or will do that moving forward.
A lot of times we don't want to step on people's toes, but we're at a point here in Utah that our sheriffs are saying we're ready to go in. We're not going to tolerate letting those things go like they did in some of those other cities.
Law enforcement also wants to keep qualified immunity, which protects them from civil suits unless if they violated the law.
Qualified immunity just makes sure that as long as an officer's acting in good faith and isn't stepping outside of their safe zones, that their house is protected. And that helps us in our recruiting. It helps us in being proactive and feeling comfortable in enforcing the laws. And we hope that the Democrats don't find a way to weaken qualified immunity or take it away.
Yeah. Some of the Democratic legislation does impact immunity, and he's drawn a line on that. We will not discuss that. It's off the table. You have to allow them to have this protection.
We want it as much as anybody else to hold those bad actors accountable. One of the things that we've been talking about is how do you have a database across the state that we can all go look, that if somebody gets terminated or they use force inappropriately or whatever it may be, how can we all go in and look at it and make sure that we're hiring good people?
In St. George, Melissa Anderson, Community Education News.